Zell Thorne walked through the grand meeting hall of the Galactic Voyager, his 4 eyes carefully scanning the room. The Arcturian diplomat had been traveling on this ship for 3 weeks now, and something strange had caught his attention. He paused near the entrance, watching as the various species found their seats for the morning briefing. The towering Juraxians took their specially designed chairs at the front, their crystal exoskeletons catching the light. Next came the gaseous Vril in their containment spheres, hovering near the middle rows. The reptilian Saurans and insectoid Sicti mingled throughout the central area. And then there were the humans. Every single one of them, without fail, moved toward the back of the room. They sat against the wall, near exits in corners. Not one human ever chose a seat in the front rows, even when those seats were clearly better. "Fascinating, isn't it?" came a voice beside him. Zell Thorne turned to see Ambassador Drex of the Centauri Alliance, his skin shifting through shades of blue as he spoke. "You've noticed it too?" Zell Thorne asked. Drex nodded. "Not just here, everywhere. Council meetings, diplomatic functions, dining halls. Humans always position themselves at the back or along walls. Perhaps they have poor eyesight and need to be farther from screens." Zell Thorne suggested. "Their vision is actually quite good for mammals," Drex replied. "And some of these humans are high-ranking officials who could demand any seat they wanted." The 2 diplomats watched as Jack Phillips, Earth's deputy ambassador to the Galactic Confederation, entered the hall. Despite several open seats in the front rows, he smiled politely and made his way to the back corner of the room. "Let's ask him," Zell Thorne decided suddenly. They approached the human, who greeted them with the standard hand gesture humans called a wave. "Ambassador Drex, Representative Zell Thorne, good morning," Jack said. "Looking forward to the trade negotiations." "Indeed," Zell Thorne replied. "But we were curious about something, Ambassador Phillips. We have noticed that humans always seem to prefer seats at the back of rooms. Is this a cultural practice?" The human's face did something strange then. His smile remained, but Zell Thorne's training in human expressions detected a slight tensing around the eyes. "Interesting." "Oh, that." Jack laughed lightly. "Just a preference, I suppose. Better view of the whole room. Plus, I like having a wall behind me so nobody can sneak up and startle me." "Is being startled a common concern for humans?" Drex asked innocently. "Figure of speech," Jack replied quickly. "Humans just like space, personal space. But the front row would provide more personal space than the crowded back row," Zell Thorne pointed out. Jack's hand moved to his collar. "Well, anyway, I should review my notes before the meeting starts. Good chatting with you both." As Jack turned his attention to his data pad, Zell Thorne and Drex exchanged meaningful glances. "He was uncomfortable with our questions," Drex whispered as they moved away. "Yes, and did you notice? He claimed it was for a better view, but positioned himself where a support column partially blocks his view of the main screen," Zell Thorne added. They paused at the refreshment station, watching as another human, Laura Kim from Earth's Science Division, entered and immediately headed toward the back, taking a position near the exit. "Something doesn't add up," Drex said. "It's too consistent to be just personal preference." "Perhaps we should investigate further," Zell Thorne suggested. "This might be important to understanding human behavior in diplomatic settings." "Agreed. I'll check the historical meeting archives to see if this pattern has been consistent. And I'll speak with representatives from other species, see if anyone knows more about this curious habit." As the meeting began, the 2 diplomats took their seats, but their minds were elsewhere. A small mystery, perhaps, but in galactic diplomacy, understanding the quirks of each species was often the key to successful negotiations. Neither of them realized they had just stumbled upon one of humanity's most closely guarded secrets. Word spread quickly among the diplomatic circles of the Galactic Confederation. Within days, representatives from a dozen species were discussing the strange human habit of sitting at the back of rooms. What had begun as a casual observation by Zell Thorne and Ambassador Drex was now the favorite topic at informal gatherings. "My theory is that it's genetic," said Ziv, a Vespian scientist whose translucent wings hummed softly as she spoke. "Humans evolved on a planet with many predators. Perhaps they needed to see everything in front of them." The group had gathered in one of the Galactic Voyager's observation lounges. True to form, the 4 humans present had positioned themselves along the back wall. "I disagree," chirped Klutik of the Tyrillians. His antennae twitched excitedly. "It must be cultural. On my world, only the highest rankings sit at the back during ceremonies. Perhaps it's a hidden status symbol." Ambassador Drex sipped his blue nutrient drink. "Whatever the reason, they clearly don't want to discuss it. I've asked 3 different humans now. They all give vague answers and change the subject." "Maybe they're hiding something," suggested Kor, a Kolbraxian security officer. His gravelly voice dropped lower. "Military training, perhaps. Position yourself to see all enemies and control access to exits." The others looked uncomfortable at this suggestion. Relations with humans were peaceful, after all. "Let's not jump to conclusions," Exhale Foreign said carefully. "But I have been researching. I've accessed records of over 500 interspecies gatherings dating back 70 years. The pattern is consistent. Humans always position themselves with clear views of entrances and exits, preferably with walls behind them." A new voice joined the conversation. "Are you all talking about humans again?" The group turned to see Lisa Howard, a human representative from Earth's Cultural Exchange Office. She smiled as she approached, carrying a cup of steaming liquid humans called coffee. "I couldn't help overhearing," she said. "You know, it's rude to gossip." "Not gossip," Ziv said quickly, her wings fluttering nervously. "Scientific inquiry." Lisa laughed. "About why we sit at the back of rooms." "Really? That's what has the great minds of the galaxy buzzing." "It is curious," Exhale Foreign said, "and consistent. And none of your fellow humans will give a straight answer." "Maybe because it's not that interesting," Lisa said with a shrug. "Some things don't have deep meanings. Some things are just habits." But Xelthorn noticed how her eyes quickly scanned the room, noting all entrances and exits. She had chosen to stand rather than sit, her back near a wall, with a clear path to the door. "If you'll excuse me," Lisa said, "I have a meeting to prepare for." She walked away, her posture relaxed, but her eyes alert. "She's hiding something too," Drex said once she was gone. "Let's be methodical about this," Exhale Foreign suggested. "I propose we document every instance of this behavior and look for patterns." Over the next week, the group did exactly that. They noted which seats humans chose in various settings. They observed how humans reacted when their preferred spots were taken. They even staged a test by rearranging furniture in one of the meeting rooms. The results were clear. Humans showed strong preferences for positions that offered 1. Good visibility of the entire room. 2. Clear sightlines to all entrances and exits. 3. Minimal exposure of their backs. 4. Multiple potential paths of movement. "This is more than a cultural quirk," Exhale Foreign told Drex as they reviewed their findings. "This is systematic, deliberate." "But why?" Drex wondered. "What are they watching for? What are they expecting to happen?" "I don't know," Exhale Foreign replied. "But I think we need help to find out. More specialized expertise." Drex nodded slowly. "I know someone at the Galactic Academy of Xenanthropology, a specialist in evolutionary behaviors." "Perfect," Exhale Foreign said. "Let's contact them right away." Neither diplomat realized their innocent investigation was about to uncover one of humanity's most closely guarded secrets and change galactic relations forever. Dr. Zilara of the Galactic Academy of Xenanthropology arrived on the Galactic Voyager 3 days later. The Pleiadian scientist was tall and slender with silvery skin that seemed to glow from within. 4 of her 6 fingers moved rapidly over a datapad as Xel Thorn and Ambassador Drex explained their observations. "Fascinating," she said. And you say this behavior is consistent across all human representatives? Without exception, Exelforn confirmed. We've documented over 70 individual humans now. All follow the same pattern. Dr. Zilara nodded thoughtfully. I'll need to form a research team. This warrants proper study. Within a week, Dr. Zilara had assembled her team. It included specialists in human physiology, evolutionary psychology, and cultural anthropology. Most importantly, she had recruited Alan Wright, a human anthropologist who specialized in cross-species behaviors. I'm not sure I can be much help, Alan said during their first meeting. He sat at the back of the conference room, of course. This seems like a lot of fuss over nothing. Dr. Zalora's silver eyes studied him carefully. Perhaps, but science often begins with simple observations that lead to deeper understanding. The team began their work. They reviewed historical footage of human interactions dating back to first contact. They analyzed seating patterns at hundreds of diplomatic functions. They created computer simulations of human movement in various settings. The evidence was overwhelming. For over a century of interspecies relations, humans had consistently positioned themselves with clear sightlines to exits and their backs against walls whenever possible. The data confirms your observations, Dr. Zilara told Exelforn and Drex. Now we need to understand why. The team began interviewing humans directly. Most responded with variations of, "It's just more comfortable," or "I like to see everything." None provided satisfying explanations. Alan Wright grew increasingly uncomfortable as the research progressed. During one meeting, Dr. Zilara confronted him directly. "Alan, you're a scientist. You can see this pattern is real. Why won't humans explain it?" Alan sighed deeply. "Look, some things are just instinctive. We don't think about them. But there must be a reason for the instinct," pressed Exelforn. Alan's eyes darted to the exits before he answered. "Maybe there is. But does it really matter?" That evening, Drex discovered something important. He called Exelforn and Dr. Zilara to his quarters immediately. "Look at this," he said, pointing to his screen. "I found old Earth training manuals for their military and security forces. They explicitly teach personnel to sit with backs to walls and eyes on entrances. They call it tactical positioning." Military training. Dr. Zilara looked troubled. "But most of the humans we've observed are diplomats or scientists, not soldiers." "Maybe all humans receive some basic tactical training," suggested Exelforn. They brought their findings to Alan the next day. His face grew pale as he saw the military manual on the screen. "Where did you get that?" he asked quietly. "It's publicly available in Earth's historical archives," Drex explained. "Alan, why would diplomatic personnel use military positioning tactics?" Alan was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. "You have to understand something about humans. Our planet. It wasn't always peaceful. We learned certain behaviors to stay safe. Are you saying humans don't feel safe among other species?" Dr. Zilara asked, concerned. "No, that's not it," Alan said quickly. "It's not about you. It's about us. It's—" He stopped suddenly. "I should check with Earth Central before discussing this further." That night, Alan sent an encrypted message to Earth's diplomatic corps. The subject line read, "URGNT, Alien Discovery of Situational Awareness Protocols." The response came quickly. "Maintain deflection. Representatives en route." The simple question about seating preferences had uncovered something far more significant than anyone had imagined. 2 days later, a high-level conference began on Proxima Centauri IV. Representatives from 37 galactic species gathered to discuss new trade routes through the Orion Arm. The meeting was held in the Grand Assembly Hall, a massive room with seating for 500 delegates. Exelforn and Ambassador Drex arrived early. They watched with interest as the various delegations entered and found their seats. "Look at the humans," Drex whispered. "Same pattern. Sure enough, most of the human delegates were taking positions along the back and side walls, all except one. Samantha Miller, Earth's senior trade representative, walked confidently to the center of the hall and took a seat in the middle row. This was unprecedented. Exil Thorne and Drex exchanged surprised glances. Perhaps our research has made them self-conscious, Exil Thorne suggested. Perhaps, Drex agreed, though he sounded unconvinced. Dr. Zilara, sitting nearby, leaned over. This breaks the pattern completely. Very interesting. The conference began with opening statements from the Galactic Confederation president. Representatives listened politely as translation devices conveyed the message in their native languages. 20 minutes into the session, it happened. The lights went out completely. The entire hall plunged into total darkness. Confused murmurs rippled through the assembly. Some species, whose vision worked differently than others, called out that they could see nothing. The Futurians, made of living light, dimmed in distress. Exil Thorne felt a rush of alarm. His species did not see well in darkness. 17 seconds passed. When the emergency lighting finally activated, bathing the room in a dim blue glow, the scene had changed dramatically. 3 figures in dark clothing lay on the ground, restrained and immobile. Around them stood 5 humans, including Samantha Miller. The humans were positioned in a protective formation around the president and several key ambassadors. One of the humans held a weapon they had taken from one of the restrained figures. The hall erupted in confusion. Security personnel rushed in, taking control of the bound intruders. What happened? Drex asked a nearby human delegate. Assassination attempt, the human replied calmly. They were using the darkness as cover. But how did you stop them? You couldn't possibly see in that darkness. The human didn't answer. Later, when order was restored, the conference officials reviewed the security recordings. The footage showed something remarkable. The moment the lights went out, every human in the room had moved with incredible speed and precision. They hadn't hesitated or shown confusion. Instead, they had executed what looked like a carefully coordinated response. Samantha Miller, seated in the center, had moved directly toward the approaching assassins. The other humans had simultaneously secured key diplomats and blocked access to the main stage. They knew exactly where everyone was in the room, even in complete darkness. Dr. Zilara said as they watched the footage. And look at their movements. Those are combat techniques. Zelthorn noticed something else. The human who sat in the center, Miller, she was bait. She deliberately broke their normal pattern to draw attention. And the others compensated by taking even more strategic positions. Drex added, "Look how they're spaced around the room. Maximum coverage." The footage showed something else too. When the emergency lights came on, every single human had a small object in their hand. Weapons that hadn't been there before, somehow concealed despite the strict security screening. The Galactic Security Council is demanding answers. Drex told Exel Thorne later that day. They've called an emergency session. Will humans finally explain? Exel Thorne wondered. I think they'll have to, Drex replied. This goes far beyond sitting preferences now. Word spread quickly through diplomatic channels. Humans had prevented an assassination using skills no one knew they possessed. The mystery had suddenly become much deeper and potentially more concerning. The Galactic Security Council convened in their high-security chamber on Europa Station. Representatives from 12 major species sat around the circular table. At the center stood Commander Greg Daniels of the Earth Defense Force. Commander Daniels, we require an explanation, said Council Leader Vix Nera, her blue scales shimmering under the lights. How did human delegates neutralize armed assassins in complete darkness? Greg stood tall, his face calm but serious. I understand your concerns. What you witnessed was our standard security protocol in action. Standard protocol? Asked Ambassador Krell of the Regelian Empire. Your diplomats moved like trained warriors. They had hidden weapons despite our scanning technology. Greg took a deep breath. The sitting pattern your researchers noticed is part of what we call situational awareness. It's not just a preference. It's a security measure. The room grew quiet. Exil, Thorn, and Drex exchanged glances from their observer seats along the wall. "Explain," demanded Vixnera. "Humans evolved on a dangerous planet," Greg began. "We faced predators that hunted from behind. Later in our history, we fought many wars against each other. We learned to survive by being aware of our surroundings at all times." He touched a control, and a hologram appeared showing ancient humans on Earth's plains. "Our ancestors developed habits that kept them alive, keeping their backs protected, watching entrances and exits, always knowing escape routes. These habits became instinct over thousands of years." The council members listened with growing unease. "But you're diplomats, not soldiers," said Krell. "Every human in space receives basic tactical training," Greg explained. "Not to fight, but to protect themselves and others if needed." The incident at the conference proved why this is necessary. "And the weapons?" asked Vixnera. "Defensive tools only," Greg replied. "Made of materials your scanners don't recognize yet. We keep them hidden because we don't want to cause alarm, but they're for emergency use only." "This is deeply troubling," said the Andorian representative. "You've been concealing your true capabilities." Greg shook his head. "Not concealing. We simply didn't draw attention to them. Humans are physically weaker than many species here. We lack natural defenses like scales, claws, or venom. We compensate with awareness and preparation. So the seeding preference," Exil Thorn began, "is strategic, not cultural," Greg finished. "Back to wall means no surprises from behind. Clear view of exits means escape routes are always available. Distance from the center means more time to react to threats. You view peaceful diplomatic gatherings as potential battle zones?" asked Vixnera, clearly disturbed. "We view every situation as having potential risks," Greg corrected. "It doesn't mean we expect violence. We're simply prepared for it." A heavy silence fell over the room. "I want to be very clear," Greg continued. "Humans are committed to peaceful relations. Our protocols have never been used aggressively. At the conference, they saved lives, including many of yours." The council members looked at each other. Their expressions ranged from concern to thoughtful consideration. "We request time to discuss this information privately," Vixnera finally said. Greg nodded and left the chamber. Outside, he met Samantha Miller. "How did it go?" she asked. "About as expected," Greg replied. "They're shocked, maybe a little scared. Should we be worried?" Greg looked through the glass walls at the council members, now in heated discussion. "Hard to say. They've just learned that humans have been quietly assessing threats and planning defensive scenarios at every gathering for the past century. It's a lot to process." Samantha nodded. "The truth had to come out eventually." "Yes," Greg agreed. "But what happens next will determine the future of human-alien relations." Inside the chamber, the debate continued. The simple question of why humans sat at the back had revealed something far more complex and potentially more concerning than anyone had imagined. The Galactic Security Council reconvened the next day. This time, they requested the presence of a human historian to provide more context. Patricia Nelson, a professor of Earth history, stood before them with a calm expression. "Professor Nelson," began Council Leader Vixnera, "we need to understand the historical reasons behind human behavior. Commander Daniels mentioned evolution and wars, but we require more details." Patricia nodded. "I understand. To explain why humans maintain constant vigilance, I must take you through our history." She activated a holographic display showing Earth's prehistoric landscapes. "Humans evolved on a planet with many apex predators," she explained. "Lions, tigers, wolves, animals that hunted in packs and often attacked from behind." The images changed to show ancient human settlements. Unlike many species who developed natural defenses like tough skin, poison, or superior strength, humans survived through awareness and tool use. Our ancestors learned to watch for danger constantly. Patricia's expression grew more serious as the images shifted to show human conflicts. As our civilization developed, we faced a new threat: ourselves. Humans fought wars for thousands of years. We developed increasingly deadly weapons and tactics. The council members watched with growing concern as the display showed the progression of human warfare. Even in times of peace, Patricia continued, humans faced dangers like surprise attacks, what we called terrorism, and criminal violence. Many humans lived in societies where being unaware of your surroundings could be fatal. But surely that changed as your civilization advanced, asked the Andorian representative. It improved, Patricia admitted, but never disappeared completely. The instinct for vigilance remained part of our psychology. When we began space exploration and diplomacy, we brought these instincts with us. Are you saying every human in diplomatic service is trained as a soldier? Krell asked. Not exactly, Patricia clarified. They receive what we call situational awareness training. They learn to assess rooms for threats and exits, maintain defensive positioning, and respond to emergencies. They aren't soldiers, but they know how to protect themselves and others if needed. Hazelthorne spoke up from his observer seat. This explains why humans always position themselves strategically, backs to walls, eyes on entrances. It's not just habit. It's survival programming. Precisely, Patricia said. Sitting at the back gives maximum visibility and reaction time. It's so deeply ingrained that most humans do it without conscious thought. Why was this never explained to the galactic community? Vix Nera asked. Patricia looked uncomfortable. Honestly, we feared judgment. Humans are aware that our history of violence makes other species nervous. We didn't want to seem paranoid or aggressive by explaining that we're constantly assessing potential threats. Even among allies? Asked Krell. It's not personal, Patricia said gently. It's instinctive. A human can trust you completely as a friend and still choose the seat with the best escape route. It's like how aquatic species prefer to be near water, even on a space station. The council members considered this. There's something else you should understand, Patricia added. What happened at the conference? Humans responding instantly to danger. That's not unusual for us. Throughout our history, ordinary humans have often acted with extraordinary courage in emergencies. She showed images of humans rescuing others from natural disasters, accidents, and attacks. This is the other side of our vigilance. Yes, we're always watching for danger, but we're also ready to protect others when danger appears. The council chamber fell silent as the members absorbed this information. What had begun as curiosity about a seating preference had revealed a complex picture of the species shaped by both danger and courage. Thank you, Professor, Vix Nera finally said. This has been illuminating. As Patricia left the chamber, she knew the council had much to discuss. The future of human relations with the galactic community hung in the balance. News of the human revelation spread quickly throughout the galaxy. Within a week, nearly every intelligent species had heard about the strange human habit of sitting at the back and its surprising explanation. Reactions varied widely across different cultures and worlds. On the planet Vega Prime, the ruling council issued a formal statement of concern. Humans have hidden their true nature from us, declared High Minister Zorn. They have been assessing us for weaknesses while pretending to be peaceful diplomats. The Centauri Alliance took a different view. Their official response praised human preparedness. The quick actions of human representatives saved many lives, including our own ambassador. Their statement read, "We see no reason for alarm." Aboard the Galactic Voyager, Hazelthorne found himself suddenly popular at diplomatic gatherings. Everyone wanted to hear about his research into human behavior. Did you suspect they were concealing combat training? Asked a Proximan diplomat during one such gathering. I knew they were hiding something, Hazelthorne admitted, but I never imagined it was so deeply connected to their evolutionary psychology. The humans themselves maintained a dignified silence in public. In private meetings, they tried to reassure nervous allies that they harbored no hostile intentions. On the 5th day after the revelation, something unexpected happened. The Draconis Empire, known for their warrior culture and general distrust of other species, requested a private meeting with Earth's representatives. Ambassador Drex was present as an observer. Later, he shared what he witnessed with Xelforn. The Draconis were impressed, Drex said. They actually respect humans more now. Their war commander said humans think like Draconis, always prepared, always vigilant. That's not necessarily reassuring, Xelforn replied. They'd proposed a joint security alliance. Drex continued. They believe humans would make excellent partners in maintaining galactic peace. Similar patterns emerged across the diplomatic landscape. Species with more militant histories found themselves drawn to humans, seeing kindred spirits. More peaceful species grew wary, concerned about what they viewed as human paranoia. Meanwhile, something interesting was happening in everyday interactions. Xelforn noticed several non-human diplomats beginning to choose seats at the backs of rooms, with clear views of entrances. Are you adopting human habits now? He asked Ambassador Krell, who had positioned himself against a wall during a cultural event. Krell looked slightly embarrassed. Their arguments about tactical positioning make sense, he admitted. I've been studying their defensive techniques. They're quite logical. A week after the initial revelation, the Galactic Confederation's Security Division announced a new training program based on human situational awareness protocols. Many species were signing up to learn the techniques that had enabled humans to respond so effectively to the assassination attempt. That same day, the Confederation's Council issued their formal response to the human disclosure. After much debate, they had reached a surprising conclusion. The Confederation acknowledges that human vigilance stems from their unique evolutionary path. The statement read, while different from many species' approaches, this vigilance has proven beneficial to the safety of all. The human practice of defensive positioning will be formally recognized as a cultural characteristic to be respected, not feared. The statement went on to formally praise the human delegates who had prevented the assassination. When Greg Daniels heard the news, he smiled with relief. It could have gone very differently, he told Samantha Miller. They could have seen us as dangerous. Some still do, Samantha pointed out. The vegan delegation has requested reduced contact with humans. True, but others are actually adopting our methods. The Centauri ambassador asked me about training yesterday. Samantha laughed. Imagine that. Aliens sitting at the back of rooms, watching the doors. The galaxy is changing, Greg said thoughtfully. All because Xelforn noticed where we like to sit. Across the stars, perceptions of humans were indeed changing. What had begun as curiosity about a seating habit had transformed into a new understanding of a species that had evolved to survive on one of the galaxy's most dangerous worlds. 6 months after the revelation about human behavior, the Galactic Confederation held its annual assembly on Earth. It was the first time the planet had hosted such an important event. Delegates from across the galaxy arrived at the newly constructed Harmony Hall in New Geneva. As they entered the massive assembly room, many gasped in surprise. The traditional layout had been completely changed. Instead of the usual rows of seats facing a central stage, the room was arranged in a circular pattern. Multiple entrances and exits were clearly marked. Most striking of all, the back walls featured comfortable seating areas with excellent views of the entire room. What is this design? Asked Ambassador Krell as he entered with Xelforn and Drex. It's called the Universal Comfort Configuration, explained Kyle Bennett, the human ambassador who greeted them. Our architects designed it based on feedback from all member species. Xelforn looked around with interest. I noticed the walls have seating all around the perimeter. Kyle smiled. Yes, we realize that different species have different comfort needs. Some, like humans, prefer to have their backs protected. Others, like the Futurians, need to be in the center of light sources. This design accommodates everyone. As the hall filled, something remarkable happened. Species distributed themselves throughout the room according to their preferences. Many non-humans chose the wall seats that humans traditionally favored. Humans, for their part, spread out more than usual, though many still gravitated toward the back walls. When the assembly began, Kyle Bennett took the stage. As Earth's host representative, he was to give the opening address. Distinguished delegates, he began, 6 months ago, a simple question changed how our species understand each other. Why do humans always sit at the back? A ripple of laughter moved through the assembly. This question led to an important discovery. Species across our galaxy evolved in different environments. What feels safe to one may feel dangerous to another. What seems polite to one may seem strange to another. Kyle gestured to the room's design. Look around you. Today, we sit in a room designed to make everyone comfortable. Vegans can be near plants. Aquatics can be near water features. Those who prefer darkness have dimmer areas. Those who need visibility, like humans, can watch the entrances. The delegates nodded in appreciation. The revelation about human vigilance could have divided us. Instead, it has brought greater understanding. Many of you have adopted elements of human tactical awareness. We have learned from your openness and trust. Ambassador Drex leaned toward Telforn. He's right. I find myself checking exits wherever I go now. Exelforn nodded, and humans seem more relaxed around other species. Look how they're spread throughout the room. Indeed, humans were sitting in various locations, though many still preferred positions with good visibility. This is the true strength of our confederation, Kyle continued. Not that we are all the same, but that we recognize and respect our differences. Humans will likely always check exits and prefer defensive positions. It's part of who we are. But now we do it openly, without hiding or apologizing. The assembly broke into warm applause. Later, during a reception, Exelforn approached Kyle. An excellent speech, Ambassador, and a beautiful hall design. Thank you, Kyle replied. None of this would have happened without your curiosity. A simple question changed everything. For the better, I think, Exelforn said. Kyle nodded. Definitely for the better. Understanding why different species behave as they do brings us closer together. Across the reception hall, humans and aliens mingled freely. Some aliens practiced human alert postures. Some humans tried alien relaxation techniques. The initial shock of the revelation had transformed into mutual respect and learning. And while many humans still preferred to sit at the back with clear views of the doors, no one found it strange anymore. It was simply one more fascinating difference in a galaxy full of diverse life, each adapted to its own evolutionary journey. The mystery had been solved, and in solving it, the galaxy had grown wiser.